Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our Career Booster in PwC. Today, we have two panelists on our Career Booster, and I would love for you guys to introduce yourselves. We can start with Yemi and then go to Veer.
Hi everyone. As Eunice mentioned, my name is Yemi Akirambere. I am a first year associate at PwC, um, and I graduated from Indiana University almost exactly a year ago. And I'm super excited to know that an organization like this exists, and I'm super excited to share my experience as well.
Hey guys, so my name is Veer and I am an assurance associate, same thing, and I'm also a uh, first year assurance associate at PwC, and I graduated from Rutgers University also about a year ago. Eunice reached out to me recently, and so I was also definitely excited to learn that there's an organization like this and look forward to speaking with you guys today.
hmm Okay. So before we jump into the question, can you give us an overview of what PwC is and what it does? Anyone can jump in.
Yeah, I could start, and then you could,
Yeah.
Vera, you could fill in wherever I missed, since it's such a big organization. I'm sure I won't hit it all. But
Sure.
PwC is one of the big four accounting firms. And so it's officially PricewaterhouseCoopers. It's a global organization with a network of firms. So we're located here in the States and everywhere else you can basically think of. We have three main lines of services: tax, assurance, and advisory. And even within those three lines of services, there are so many specialty groups. I think a lot of people think that PwC typically only hires accountants, and that is not true at all. You'll see, most especially in the advisory field, you'll see people with engineering backgrounds, with marketing backgrounds. So there's PwC has a lot to offer.
Definitely, yeah. Just to add on to that, yeah, PwC kind of spans all over the globe as well, which is kind of interesting. It's not just limited to one country, one continent, which is what also makes it so unique and interesting to work there because you get to meet people from virtually all over the world. I mean, we have, at least I'm working out of New Jersey, so we've had people come from South Africa, from London, from Australia, so there's definitely that, and they bring kind of different knowledge, different expertise, but as Yemi said, essentially there's three main lines of services: assurance, tax, and advisory. And then as you go into those, there's more and more specialization, but there's people from all different backgrounds. Although it's a CPA firm, you have, I've seen engineers there, you see a lot of IT people working there, and even non-business people. So
Mhm. Okay, great. So currently, I know you guys are both full-time associates at PwC. Did this start off as an internship, or did you interview for the full-time position full on?
I started as an internship. I actually did two internships with the firm, um, and I'm actually from the Indianapolis office. So I did two internships. The first internship was a non-client facing internship, so it was just more getting exposure to each service line. And then the second one was a client facing, which means that I was actually working in one of those lines of services,
Mhm.
which was tax. So that led to me being offered a full-time
Mhm.
um, position with the firm.
so I did do an internship, but even before that, I did what they call leadership program, which
Mhm.
they do often for if you're in your second year of college, then they'll do like a leadership event, which is essentially like a 2 to 3 day event where you get to learn about the firm, depending on whatever region you're in. If you're in New
Mhm.
York Metro or whichever office you might be in, you would go to their leadership event. You get to really get more exposed to the firm, meet people there, and after that event, you get to apply to a specific kind of line of service, like whether it be audit, tax, whichever one you
Mhm.
wanted. So I did that first at the end of second year. Then I interned the following year, and then it was a full time job afterwards. Yeah.
Mhm. So can you tell us a little bit more about this leadership program? How did you have to apply for it? How did you find it? Yeah, give us more information on that.
Sure. So there was an on-campus organization I was a part of. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with it, but it's called Beta Alpha Psi. So at least at Rutgers, I was affiliated with that organization, and so they would have representatives and HR people from
Mm-hmm.
all different companies kind of come present what opportunities they have for what levels. So at the time, when I was in my second year, I think it was, so during the fall, there's usually recruitment for internships. And then
Mm-hmm.
the spring was essentially recruitment for more of these leadership programs. So that's essentially when I got the opportunity to talk to a recruiter and learn more about this through that organization, essentially, and then applied online through my university's kind of career website and
Mm-hmm.
went from there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sounds amazing. So I know you both mentioned you had internships at PwC before you got full time. Can you walk us through how the process was getting this internship, and then also when you did get the interview, how did you prepare for it?
This is a transparent moment. So the first time I interviewed with a firm for the internship, well, I guess I could start with how I got the interview.
Mm-hmm.
So my freshman year of college, I got connected with a couple of, with actually one specific sophomore who was like willing to basically become my mentor. And so
Mm-hmm.
he told me about a diversity career fair that was happening on our campus. And he encouraged me to go by myself,
Mm-hmm.
which was kind of intimidating being a freshman and having, people from really global organizations. And so I
Mm-hmm.
went there. I met with the recruiters, who are typically always really friendly. And they were telling me about a list of leadership programs as well as internships they had. And so they told me about the internship they had, and I decided to apply. Um, and I went through the first round of interviews, which were on our school campus, Indiana University's campus.
Mm-hmm.
And that went well. And then I got the call back for the in-office interview, which is where you which is where you go to the office, whichever
Mm-hmm.
office you're applying for, you'll go there. They'll kind of give you a tour. They'll have you meet people within the office.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think I interviewed with about two people, at least two people for sure within the office. Um, and so I thought it had went well, and it did not, or not that it didn't go, but I guess they just said that I wasn't um, as prepared as I could be,
Mm-hmm.
which was I was glad because by the time I did the interview the second time, I
Mm-hmm.
knew I was more ready. So they told me I didn't have or I didn't get the internship, but they also told me about the leadership program that I
Mm-hmm.
believe Vera is talking about. And so I got that and I did that. So next year, that kind of like prepared me even more to
Mm-hmm.
interview next year, and I got the position. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, don't get discouraged if you don't get it the first time around.
Yeah.
It's honestly, in some opinions, it is best. And there are so many opportunities, especially if you go to a big university that has a
Yeah.
lot of career fairs. So I would just encourage you to make sure you're connecting with
Mm-hmm.
mentors so that they can help you prepare for for interviews. And even as Bear mentioned, being involved in organizations like
Mm-hmm.
Beta Alpha Psi and um, colleges typically have a
Mm-hmm.
great number of organizations, but getting involved in orgs like that will help you best prepare for interviews and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so before we go off to VR, so did you intend to apply again after you got denied? Or was it like you had to go through some process before you felt like, okay, I'm qualified, I can apply again and perhaps get the job?
Um, I'm not gonna lie, I went through a salty period. I was like, what do you mean? But I was also a freshman, so I was kind of immature in my way of
Okay.
thinking. But I think that was a real good reality check, letting me
Mm-hmm.
know that there are things that I can work on. Even though I landed the second interview, which
Mm-hmm.
some people didn't get, there was still more room for improvement for me. So
Mm-hmm.
I think once I sat down with people from my career, services office. They told me these are things I could work on, and so um, I knew that I still really liked PwC, and I thought that would be a great opportunity. So I
Mm-hmm.
never fully had it out of my mind, but I definitely knew that second time around, I'm getting this internship. So and it happened. So I would say that it was more of a good reality check for me. Even though it did discourage me a little bit, I still was able to go from there.
Okay, sounds great. Okay, and to you, Vier.
Yeah, so kind of similar to what I was talking about before. Apart from the organization, the Beta Alpha Psi, which is what I met the recruiter through, similar to Yemi, I also knew some, I guess, seniors who were maybe 2, 3 years ahead of me who had already either interned at PwC or had full-time offers there. So they also, based on their advice and based on kind of what they told about the company, the culture, that's kind of what led me toward applying to begin with there as well. So.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, we only had an interview at the end of before that leadership program, so it was an hour-long interview. Pretty much as far as that went, there was like a pre-networking event the night
Mm-hmm.
before the actual interview, which was nice because it gave you the chance to meet the interviewer and some other people, let's say from a bunch of different roles. And then the day after, it was the interview the following morning. It was roughly an hour long, but because we were in our like second year, the expectations weren't for us to really be technically knowledgeable about accounting. Like there were really no like specific questions. It was more like very standard, very behavioral questions, which the actual interview must have lasted maybe 25, 30 minutes. And then afterwards, it was really more just a conversation, getting to know each other. There was a partner interviewing me, so kind of learning more about them, their line of service, the work they do, and for them to do the same. So that was at least the experience there. And then about maybe I want to say a week or two later, we got a call back from the recruiter, at least for the leadership program. So that was great. And then after attending that, it was like you got a formal offer for an internship, which we got to select, like which kind of line of service we wanted to go into. And so once we accepted that, it was essentially, let's say we accepted it in August and the internship was in May. So throughout the year, we were kind of, if PwC was on campus, we would get alerts to kind of come to their networking events and maybe talk with other students or, just be proactive in that sense. So it was a very like structured recruiting process, like step by step. So I thought it was pretty like easy to follow, pretty nice.
Okay. So, specifically during the interview, do you remember any of the questions they may have asked you?
Yeah, so they were a lot of like your standard behavioral questions. Like for example, a lot of them are focused around. So I think, and I'm not sure if Yemi could once again add on, but from my experience, most, if not all, work at PwC is done on a team basis.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the most important qualities that they look for is the fact that you should know how to work within a team, to work with people. So a lot of the questions, let's say, will be faced along, once again, let's say stating an experience of you working in a team, just to once again see how you get along with people, how you do in team with team dynamics. And apart from that, I think the other thing that they look for is once again your like having the ability to solve problems on your own and lead within teams as well. So same thing. I think one question I remember was once again to state an experience of like working in an environment where something didn't go as planned or I experienced failure. Like what exactly happened? How did I respond to that? So once again, the point of that question just to see how you respond to, let's say, adversity, to challenges. And they just want to see that you're doing that in a positive way and that you have experience with that. That's pretty much it. Those are like some of the, I guess, main questions.
And Yemi, do you have anything to add to that as well?
I think Veer hit on most of it. It is team, since most of the work you'll do is team oriented. Most of the questions are trying to get a gauge for how you work on a team. So if you have your resume or you'll most likely have your resume present. And so based on the organizations, or for me personally, my interviewer, he just kind of went through my resume and saw the groups that I was in and like asked questions about like, okay, how did you demonstrate leadership in this organization? Or tell me about how you handled a conflict in, in this organization. So I think For the most part, my interview was behavioral, which means that I was just seeing like what types of behavior I demonstrated in
Mhm.
certain situations. And then I think another type of interview that people have maybe at the next level is
Mhm.
actually is a technical interview, which
Mhm.
is they're trying to gauge your technical knowledge. And I think you'll kind of see that in like industries like banking and things like that. That's where you'll have more of those technical. We want to see exactly what you know. But
Mhm.
I think um, for most of the PwC internships, the friends that I had that interviewed, they said their interview was behavioral. So.
Mhm. Sounds good. Okay, so we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk more about on the job. So you guys did touch briefly on the training program for interns, but can you tell me about your experience, perhaps maybe your first day when you started your internship?
Sure, I can start off with that. The first day to the first week, for most of the programs, whether it be internships or even when you're starting full time, there's normally formal training. Not normal, I think there's formal training programs
Mm-hmm.
for every line of industry or every service group that you join. So they range from maybe 1 week to 3 weeks, depending on kind of what you're choosing.
Mm-hmm.
And they're structured kind of like a classroom. So it's like a easy transition from, let's say, college to this, because it's like eases you into kind of the workforce. So that first week or two, it's very structured, similar to a class. You'll be, let's say, in a conference room. Usually you're sitting in groups, because
Mm-hmm.
same thing, you're going to be working individually, like they'll be teaching up there as well. And then you'll also be working in groups on certain assignments too. So in that sense, it's good. So a lot of it is just getting that first week is really, because the firm is so big, there's so many
Mm-hmm.
programs, whether it be to, let's say, record your time when you're working, to
Mm-hmm.
just the applications you're going to be using during your work. Uh, they just want you to get accustomed to that. So you'll probably get a laptop which already has everything set up on it, but it's
Mm-hmm.
about you learning maybe some of the basic stuff so you can navigate around to certain applications, things like that. And you get a
Mm-hmm.
lot of opportunity to obviously meet a lot of people also who are starting new hires. So
Mm-hmm.
that's also good, because it's an environment which isn't like super intimidating. You're not next to people who are managers and partners the entire time. You're with
Mm-hmm.
fellow associates. So yeah, it's pretty easy going that first week or two.
Sounds great.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
Yemi?
yeah. My first week was trainings as well, I believe. Um, Yeah, I know for tax personally, we had a national training, so all of the tax interns met up in somewhere close to DC. So that was nice. It was about a couple of days, and then the remainder of that week, we went back to our offices, to our individual offices, and you kind of did a little bit more training if you had some left over,
Mm-hmm.
since a lot of the training is virtual now. And then I will say another thing that happened within that first week for me is PwC has a formal mentoring system
Mm-hmm.
or formal coaching system. And so, even as interns, you're connected with your buddy, who is
Mm-hmm.
typically a first year or senior associate, who will be your go to for any questions you may have,
Mm-hmm.
which is really good because it can be intimidating. To kind of like ask a question. So that
Mm-hmm.
person is designated as a person you go to if you ever have any questions. And then you also have a coach, which is um, at the senior level and above, or at the manager level and above. And so that person is there to help you kind of get a broader understanding of the firm and how all of the pieces
Mm-hmm.
connect. And then you have your relationship leader, who is at the director level, and that
Mm-hmm.
person is has typically spent a longer time with the firm. And so they're also there to give you a broader picture of everything you're doing as well. So I thought it was really nice. Within the first week, I'd connected with um, those three people
Mm-hmm.
on like different occasions, and so it was just helping me expand my network, get more comfortable with the
Mm-hmm.
office, feel more like I was a part of the team.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then another part, just kind of going back to that training part, PwC is really going digital now. So if you're thinking about the bots and
Mhm.
how everything is very pervasive now.
Mhm.
PwC is going full force into it, which is really nice that they're
Mhm.
trying to stay with the curve, if not ahead of
Yeah.
it. And so it wasn't as PwC wasn't as involved in that when I was an intern, but I can only
Mhm.
imagine for interns that are coming in, that'll definitely be something they have you doing. Though we have all sorts of trainings for just how to get your digital acumen up.
Mhm.
So I'm dealing with Alteryx and UiPath. So all of these things. So I would say that if you still have the opportunity to take
Mhm.
classes that can expose you
Mhm.
um, to software like that, like Alteryx and things like that, definitely sign up for that because the firm
Mhm.
is pushing really big on that, and I believe that that really is going to be a part of our future. So
Mhm.
I feel like most interns will see that in their training from here on
Mhm.
out.
So this aspect of training, it's like worldwide PwC.
Sorry, say it again.
It's like a worldwide training program that's been implemented throughout PwC.
Yeah, yeah, very. I'm sure you've had to take your digital quest. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Hey, you mean when you're saying worldwide, you mean like you're
Like
talking about other countries, they have similar training programs, you're asking?
yes, throughout the your organization. So it's like something that's
Yeah.
been implemented throughout every PwC, whether it be in North America, South America, and so forth.
Yeah, exactly. I think obviously it might vary with like there are certain like let's say laws and standards that we have to follow in
Mhm.
the US which may not apply, let's say in Europe or something, but they do
Mhm.
have training processes throughout their offices wherever they might be. I guess
Mhm.
they'll just be tailored to that country specifically, to their
Mhm.
laws, to the services
Mhm.
they're providing there. So they might just differ a little bit, but overall, yes, the same stuff.
Mhm. Yeah, that's good to know about. I'm really like updating your skills in regards to tech coming in as an
yes.
intern. Okay. So to change gears a little bit within on the job. So as an intern, like what made you really successful? What made you stand out um during your this period of time?
I would say for my client facing internship,
Mm-hmm.
what made me successful was asking questions. So as an intern and even as a first year associate, they kind of have an expectation that you know nothing coming in,
Yeah.
which is kind of nice because
Mm-hmm.
there are people who haven't taken a class in tax or in audit and, you know, are in that internship. So they just really appreciate if you ask questions because that means
Mm-hmm.
that you're actually thinking about it and that you're present. So I think asking questions whenever I needed help, but
Mm-hmm.
making sure I'm also doing a good job of not just asking it
Mm-hmm.
every like moment, but organizing all of my questions and writing them down and then asking them all at one time because you are dealing with people who are on multiple projects. So it's also good
Mm-hmm.
that you're being considerate of their time.
Mm-hmm.
So asking questions and then also just kind of thinking when you're finished with a work product, just thinking about the person who's above you who's going to be reviewing it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was something that I kept in mind just to know that, okay, I'm done with this work product, but let me try and think about what type of questions they'll have
Mm-hmm.
just so I'm addressing those so that more time is cut off instead of, waiting for them to ask me those questions and then edit it
Mm-hmm.
again, since there's so many levels of review within the firm. So just kind of thinking about the person who's above you because you're trying to make their lives
Mm-hmm.
easier, and then asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Pierre?
Um, So just to add on, definitely the questions thing was one of my main points as well, which Yemi
Mm-hmm.
touched on. So just to add something different, it would be to try and see, like even at that stage, right? Because when you're coming in, kind of like she mentioned, where you don't really a lot, like I didn't, so I interned in audit, but I hadn't taken a class in audit yet. So I truly didn't know anything at the time when I started to intern. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of it is just thinking about, okay, it doesn't matter what task you're being given, but how does that like fit into the bigger project, the bigger role? If it's an audit, if it's a tax
Mm-hmm.
assignment, where does that piece, like, how does it help? Because at least audit specifically, I can speak. A lot of the times, what you're working on, someone else might rely on.
Mm-hmm.
So if you understand what role your work and your timing and everything else plays in, let's say, someone else's work that they have to do, that definitely does help, and it helps you to kind of once again begin to think more broadly and think in new ways as well, which helps. One of the things that I didn't necessarily do, but I do think is important, like as an intern, is to like really seek not only opportunities and challenges to do work that's challenging, but really seek upfront coaching a lot. So what that means is that if you're doing work, to really kind of whoever's going to be reviewing it, to ask them for advice on how you're doing and constantly seek feedback. And the reason I think this is so important, at least coming out of college, is because, at least speaking personally from college, I didn't receive a lot of, let's say, negative, not negative, but I didn't receive a lot of criticism, right? Like in college, a lot of the times we, let's say, receive grades and that's it, we kind of move on, or we receive some basic comments. But you have to realize and keep in mind when you start work that you don't know anything, and therefore you're really going to receive a lot of feedback. And don't take that like personally, don't take that in a bad way, but instead really learn to appreciate that, because it's giving you a chance to grow. Like if nobody gives you advice, nobody gives you feedback, you're not really going to develop as a professional. So you're truly going to get a lot of feedback in those, I would say, first 2 to 3 years when you're working. And that's expected. It's just to take that positively and just use that to kind of constantly improve yourself and then see where you can be better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just to,
Add to it.
yeah, just to, that's a really good point. And I actually did a joint program in college, and that program got me so prepared to receive constructive criticism. So like the 3 years of my undergrad, I didn't like I'd receive grades and things like that, but that program got me used to people um, like actually telling me how I could better work with people, just like really things that I could personally, internally work on my leadership skills, things like that. So or like it even got me used to forced ranking, which is something that in the real world does happen. So I would say, yeah, definitely get more comfortable with it. And another way to get more comfortable with it is by actively seeking it out. So, after a project is done, or like even in the midst of a project when you're working with a teammate, it's good to seek that feedback even informally, asking them, okay, how do you think I could do this better? Or what are some things that you noticed that maybe I could work on for the next step of this project? So just making it as informal as possible, because that shows them that you're really interested in improving. Even though your internship may be like 2 months, there's still a lot of room for improvement within those 2 months. So I think actively asking, what are ways I can improve is a really good way to stand out.
You mentioned something about forced ranking. Can you explain it for our viewers real quickly?
Yeah. So force ranking is, let's say, you're working in a group, or like, let's say there are 5 associates across a market, which is when I say a market, I mean offices, like a couple of offices from different locations. And out of those 5, only 2 of them can be ones, and then the rest will have to be like a 2 or 3. So it's just kind of a forced distributive line. And so somebody has to be a 1, somebody has to be a 5, and then, somebody has to be the 2 to 3 or the 2 to 4 within that ranking. So yeah, it's just kind of one person is going to be the best, and then one person is going to be the person that can work on the most things within that ranking. So does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And this changes over time, correct? Like it won't be, let's say the next month they'll do it again.
Yeah, so that doesn't happen every day in the firm. They're not they're not they're not every day forcing you or ranking you. But I'm just saying, getting in the habit of knowing that you're being rated at the end of the day, and so you do want to get promoted, and so not everybody gets promoted at the same time, and so it's making sure that you're doing the next step, or you're going above and beyond to make
Mm-hmm.
sure you're standing out, because that's what's going to put you in that
Mm-hmm.
number one place right there. So
Mm-hmm. So, in regards to going above and beyond, are there any projects that you had to really go above and beyond that made you stand out as an intern? Or can you tell me about your experience on projects? Because I know usually with interns, they put you together on a specific project, correct? So
mhm.
how do you stand out amongst like all your other peers?
So at least for my intern, like the group that I was working on and the client I was working on, I was the only intern. So like I know there are certain definitely projects or clients where you'll
Mm-hmm.
have multiple interns or multiple people the same year. But for me at least it was I was the only intern. So
Mm-hmm.
in terms of standing out, I guess I would say the main thing to focus on and like you want to look at it as in once again levels. So they have we have like certain, let's say, five values that you're ranked against or that you're kind of looked at, which we call PwC professional. So
Mm-hmm.
what's expected from an intern at a certain level of those values is different than what's expected as, let's say, a first year associate or a second year associate. So the way to really stand out, I would say,
Mm-hmm.
is to look at the expectations, obviously understand if you're an intern what the expectations of an intern
Mm-hmm.
are, but then maybe look at the first or second year associates expectations, and if you could meet those, if you could at least try to strive toward those. So an example will be if you're given a task, sure you might not know how to do it, but maybe
Mm-hmm.
use the firm's resources, use things at your disposal to really make an effort to see if you can make progress on it. And of course, don't spend a lot of time doing that. Like you can of course check with the senior, but
Mm-hmm.
even that just shows that you're taking an initiative, right? It's not like you have a question, you have a problem, and you just run to a senior or you run to someone who's reviewing your work.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, go with them and propose solutions. Say that, hey, listen, I've run into this kind of problem or this issue. Here's how I think I can solve it. What's your advice? Or here's what I've done so far. So when you show that you're proactively taking steps, it helps show them too that you're making an effort, and then they
Mm-hmm.
can maybe redirect you or give you or maybe ask more questions to get you thinking, which is going to really at least stand out for an intern.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say that's actually a really good point, Bear. Just thinking about the step above you. Um, I also was the only intern, the only tax intern for my
Mm-hmm.
office, so I wasn't necessarily working with another intern for most
Mm-hmm.
of my projects. Um, but I will say, yeah, as Vera mentioned, just like really thinking about the person above you is
Mm-hmm.
important, and that's um, typically the way to show them that you have a good understanding of what you're doing, and even at
Mm-hmm.
the next level, you could handle those responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I think that as an intern, um, like another way to stand out is with this technology is getting used to it even before you start your internship,
Mm-hmm.
so that if there's ever an opportunity where you could utilize it, that would
Mm-hmm.
be that could really make you stand out. Because if you think about it, um, a lot of people who have been with the firm for a longer time aren't
Mm-hmm.
as exposed to it. And so you even showing them things that exist on there that they didn't know is always
Mm-hmm.
a good way to stand out. So I think that if I could go back to my internship, or like if I was to have an internship in
Mm-hmm.
the future, that I would definitely make sure I was up on my all tricks and things like that, so
Mm-hmm.
that I could use it whenever I needed
Mm-hmm.
to.
Okay, it sounds great. And are there any like interesting, I guess, projects that you worked on that really excited you or you enjoyed working on at PwC?
So one of the things that I got the opportunity to do as an intern and both as a first year associate so far
Mm-hmm.
were inventory counts, which I know
Mm-hmm.
like not everyone finds them the most fun, but you still get to get out of the
Yeah.
office and let's say go to like different companies
Mm-hmm.
and perform inventory counts there at their let's say warehouses or things like that. So that was interesting to me just because you get to get out of the office, and then if you really think about it, at least like the work that I was doing audit,
Mm-hmm.
you're usually you are at a client site, but you're usually like looking at Excel files and numbers, and you're most of the time behind a computer screen. Sure, you do get to interact with clients, which I think is another good part about audit. You get to see them face to face, which is just helps to build relationships. But then when you're seeing something on an Excel sheet or behind a computer screen, it's something completely different than actually getting to see it in person, right? So when you're going to, let's say, a warehouse or something, it gives you a much better understanding of, okay, maybe how this business works and things like that. At least though, as of this past December, they normally do inventory counts at the end of the year as well. So I got to go to one of those for a company which I wasn't like, that's not in my industry. So it gave me the opportunity to kind of learn their business, see how their things work, and so it was an experience in that sense. And I also went alone. Like I had like a senior on call. Like if I did have any questions, I could give them a call. But I think that level of responsibility and those things is also pretty challenging and also rewarding, because when you're going there, the client or whoever's there, they kind of treat you, they just see the name and they understand. They don't really care what level you are. You're just you're representing that brand. So it doesn't matter if it's your first day, your first week, whatever it might be. So that is definitely challenging and pretty rewarding, at least like a fun part.
And so I think that's one of the main differences between tax and assurance is that assurance, the assurance team is typically never in the office. You guys are mostly at a client site. Correct me if I'm wrong, Veer. But I know for tax, we're mostly in the office. So I thought it was really nice, or depending on what specialty group you're in within tax, will determine if you're at the office. But the one I was in, we're typically in the office. However, for the project I was on, it was actually a quarter project, which means that we're auditing we're reviewing, auditing the income tax part of the client, or their RTP, their provision. So I thought it was really nice being able to actually go out to the client site, go through their information, seeing how they requested information, even though it's becoming more digital now, or technology centered. So I thought it was cool being able to actually be on their site, because that's something that I'm not used to. And then just seeing the work paper from start all the way to finish was really interesting, and seeing how my piece the piece that I worked on got inputted into the memo or the report we had to type up was nice. So.
Okay, so sounds great. Okay, so my next question for you guys is, so you all work at PwC full time. Since being there, what is the favorite aspect of your job or the company itself?
I would say for me, so community service and support is one of my core values, and seeing and knowing that PwC is so involved in the community in a multitude of ways was super encouraging. It's something that they even try and get you involved with during your internship. And so full time, it's even pushed even more. You even have a certain amount of hours that you can charge if you're, working within the community. So I know that's really important for me. It's not just doing the technical work, which all still matters. And, we're still a business at the end of the day, but seeing their community involvement is just really cool. And knowing that if I have any personal community service or types of organizations that I'm really involved with, the firm is willing to allow me to, get the company involved in that. So I just see that as a really rewarding thing with the work and with the community service. So.
So PwC they have 5 values, which I mentioned before, which they not only use to they use those on your performance reviews and when you are essentially receiving feedback as well, because so everything really with the firm is aligned with those 5 values, and I'll just kind of read them very quickly. But they're number 1 is act with integrity. Number 2 is make a difference. Number 3 is care. 4 is work together, and 5 is reimagine the possible. So when you're going through the recruiting process and you're actually working there as well, I think an important part is that everything that they're doing, your professional development, things like that, you're really trying to grow and align yourself with these 5 values.
Mm-hmm.
So I think before you even join the firm, when you're looking, it's not just with PwC, but it's with any other firm. It's important to learn what their values are.
Mm-hmm.
Really think about your own as well, right? Because when you really aren't familiar with your own, it's very easy to kind of go wherever,
Mm-hmm.
like go to any company. So when you really, for example, like Yemi just mentioned, kind of the community service aspect and how
Mm-hmm.
that's important to her. So she was able to align, let's say, with that specific value, and so that worked out well for her.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess all I'm saying is that once again, really look into it. It doesn't matter what firm you're going for or you're interested in. Look at their values. Really think about your own, and then if those do align or they do come
Mm-hmm.
across, then of course that's like a great thing, because that firm will help you strengthen those values and work towards
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But what makes it, what's like your favorite aspects of all those values that they have? And what's your favorite?
them. I would say personally, I definitely like working together
Mm-hmm.
just because of the aspect that I've gotten a chance so far, even though once again I've been there for almost a year now.
Yeah.
I've gotten a chance to work with a bunch of different people from. I mean, I'm once again based out of the New Jersey office, so
Yeah.
not only people from New Jersey, but from New York. Also met people from other countries, whether it be
Mm-hmm.
Sweden, South Africa, as mentioned before. So I think that aspect of working together, at least for me, is great because it kind of gives me the opportunity to learn, apart from obviously auditing itself, but you get to learn a lot from a bunch of different people and like the
Mm-hmm.
cultures they come from, things they bring to the table. So that aspect to me is very fun. And also the fact that I think the average age at PwC is maybe, I want to say 27 or so. So
Really?
it's if you think about it, it's very young compared
Mm-hmm.
to, I have, let's say, certain other friends who they are at other companies, but let's say they're working with a lot of 30, 40-year-olds, which
Mm-hmm.
nothing wrong with that, but it's harder, obviously, to connect for a
Mm-hmm.
21, 22-year-old on that level with them, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to when you're working with a group of your peers or people who are close to your age. Like, I think it's easier to obviously connect them and build easier relationships.
Mm-hmm. Did this surprise you going in, or you knew going into PwC that it's a fairly young company?
Yeah, no, so like going into it, I was kind of aware of that, and that's like one of the things that they definitely do, like to pitch to college students as well,
Mm-hmm.
because of the fact that that's obviously a great thing, because you kind of get to work with a bunch of the peers that you went to college with and things like that. So it's definitely a big selling point for them.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, as even as I would say the higher ups, like executives, you'll find them in their 30s. Um, so it's very kind of easy and laid back. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that definitely does help them in that aspect.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and to you, Yemi, was there any surprises for you when you started working at PwC? Any surprises you encountered?
Surprises. Uh, uh, not well. That I would say my first busy season. So I did a summer internship. I
Yeah.
did not do a winter internship, which is typically when we have our busy season. Um, And so, for those that don't know, a busy season is a deadline is fast approaching.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for tax personally, it starts around the beginning of the year up until April 15th, since that's the tax deadline.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, I had never done a busy season. I
Mm-hmm.
definitely heard a lot of people talk about their experience and just how intense it can get, and the importance of making sure you're
Mm-hmm.
finding that healthy balance. And so, it's
Mm-hmm.
one thing to hear advice, to take advice, and it's another thing to actually experience it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that was probably, I knew it was coming, but it was still kind of like, whoa, it was still like being on the roller coaster by yourself. So I
Mm-hmm.
would say that was my most eye-opening experience.
Okay, it sounds good. Okay, so my next question for you is, how long is your workday? How long is it typically?
So that's depends.
Hmm.
It depends on the time of year, if you're in busy season or not.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it depends if there's a deadline. Even if you're
Hmm.
not in busy season and there's a deadline that's fast approaching, the
Hmm.
hours may increase. But I think PwC actually uh, offers. So we get the regular 2 weeks that most people get in corporate America
Hmm.
of paid time off, but then the firm also has um, it has 2 week long, or yeah, it has like 2 week long vacations that are
Hmm.
outside of those 2 weeks paid off. So I think that's
Hmm.
also a really nice balance because during busy season you can be working some really
Hmm.
exhausting hours. So I'm not going to sugarcoat that. It can get really long. You can work on the
Hmm.
weekends as well. But I think the firm does, if your hours amp up during busy
Hmm.
season, then you could flex maybe some of those hours to,
Hmm.
maybe working a little less for, a weekend or for a week.
Hmm.
So it can get hectic, but I think making sure you're finding what works for you and you're
Hmm.
taking care of yourself is important because I think a lot of people do quit early because they weren't able to, for a multitude of reasons, but
Hmm.
one of those reasons can be they weren't able to find that balance or, they weren't able um, to take care of themselves, and so
Hmm.
it gets really draining. So I think making sure that even if you do work a really long week or a long couple of weeks,
Hmm.
making sure you're taking that time off, um, after
Hmm.
everything has subsided to take care of yourself.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I would.
yeah. Oh, sorry.
Okay, you continue.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, as far as the hours go, definitely kind of what Yemi was saying. It really depends on the time of the year, and I mean, of course, busy season is, as you can imagine, the busiest. Like that first 3 months or so, from January to March, where the hours are definitely long.
Hmm.
Throughout the rest of the year, though, it really depends on, once again, if deadlines are approaching. Like if a deadline is approaching, then you can always expect, okay, there might be some longer hours, or you might have to adjust accordingly.
Hmm.
I think one of the good things though is, like, at this time of the year now, at least for me, it's not as busy, and so we get the opportunity. I know PwC pushes a lot of like flexible working conditions. So all that means is, for example, let's say we'll sometimes have like work from home Fridays. So you come
Hmm.
in, let's say we're working 9 to 6. I would say average 9 to 6, 6:30,
Hmm.
and they'll like take out an hour in between for lunch, right? So
Hmm.
that's, let's say, the average Monday to Thursday, and then occasionally Fridays are like work from home. So
Hmm.
once again, if you know what you're doing, if you kind of if you once again are aligned on your with your senior on what
Hmm.
you have to do, working from home, that's great in the sense that
Hmm.
obviously it cuts out the commute time. It doesn't really, if you live in a city especially, it's just takes a lot of time just to go back and forth to the office.
Hmm.
So saving time in that sense. Or even if things come up, if you have other commitments, or I've sometimes had like Rutgers alumni events,
Hmm.
the university I went to. So because it's closer to where I live, I'll sometimes just ask if I can work from home that day because I have to
Hmm.
go somewhere in the evening. And they're
Hmm.
fine with that, as long as, once again, you're just aligned on what needs to be done and you kind of
Hmm.
just get that done in that time. So I think that's definitely one of the benefits, I would say,
Hmm.
compared to other professions where they either way have to go in person every day.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. It sounds
Yeah, and
good.
I would say, go
Yeah, go for it.
I was gonna say on that note with Bear, mentioning the working at home, I think that as an intern, well, from my personal experience as
Hmm.
an intern, just because it's your first couple of months on the job, um, I would say maybe don't expect to work home as often, just because it's important to realize that you are working in a team.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if this differs by office. I know for the indie office, um, even though things might not have been as busy, I still chose
Hmm.
to come into the office just because if I did have to do anything, I typically had to have my senior or my
Hmm.
buddy explain everything to me. So I just keep that in mind that you are working in a team, and even though technology is getting better and
Hmm.
um, you could video chat, for explanations that you are working in a team. So you may not get that benefit of being able to work at home immediately when you start interning, but I think as you get a grip of, as you get more used to what you're doing, that's when you
Hmm.
can expect, those. work home Fridays to exist. Or you might be in an office where they do that on a regular basis, even if you just
Mm-hmm.
started or not. So I think it's just really making sure you're understanding the culture of the office that you're in. I think PwC as a whole has a culture, but there's even like subcultures within the culture, depending on the office you're in. So I think
Mm-hmm.
it's really important to understand that dynamic and then work off of
Mm-hmm.
that.
Okay. So you just going to transition based on your last point. So I do want to talk a little bit about the company culture before we come to a close. So in regards to the company culture, can you tell us about your experiences as minorities in some right, being based on your race or your gender, and how do you navigate this?
So being African American, so I'm actually Nigerian. I realized I didn't even say that, but I'm Nigerian. So being an African American woman, I feel like the firm definitely or has definitely exposed me to all of the resources they have.
Mhm,
The firm actually has something called multicultural inclusion networks, and so
mhm,
those are just support groups within the firm where you can connect with other people of the same, culture, the same race as
mhm,
you. Um, and so those organizations provide opportunities to connect. There's also community service events and just leadership opportunities within
mhm,
there, as well as tools to help you improve your leadership skills as
mhm,
well. And so I think from the very first day I began with the firm, they made those resources and those inclusion networks made known to me, which is really helpful because it can be intimidating working in
mhm,
corporate America, which I don't know the percentage, but it's still mostly white males.
mhm,
So I think just knowing that um, there are groups within the firm to support you
mhm,
throughout has been very instrumental for me. We have formal coaches, but I've built relationships with so many people informally through the
mhm,
diversity and inclusion, um, the diversity and inclusion events that the firm has hosted. So
mhm,
I think that that's something that PwC is definitely committed to, especially Tim Ryan,
mhm,
our U.S. chair. He's done so many things within the community, even outside of PwC,
mhm,
but within the community, he's done so many things. And so I think it's important to see that not only is the leadership, the top leadership of the firm doing that, but
mhm,
even people at lower levels are committed
mhm,
to it as well.
Yeah, just to once again add on kind of what Yemi was saying, where the
mhm,
majority of kind of workers at PwC, I would still say the demographic is largely white males. So in that sense, there's a certain culture that comes with that. But
mhm,
from my perspective, like working at PwC, it's not really something that is really an issue or a problem. It's
mhm,
something that I think, in fact, it's one of the benefits of kind of being able to work with like a bunch of different people
mhm,
from different offices and different backgrounds. I think that PwC does like a very good job of trying to incorporate a lot of different backgrounds because I think once
mhm,
again that's really where some of the best ideas come out when you get to meet different people and
mhm,
just have a mutual respect from where people come from, the languages they speak, the
mhm,
cultures they come from. Like just in my personal experience, let's say if I've had, I'm also Indian, by the way, granted I was
mhm,
born here, but my parents are from India. So if, let's say we have some like Indian holidays or cultures, like
mhm,
they've been absolutely fine with, with understanding that, respecting that, and maybe letting
mhm,
me, leave early on a certain day
mhm,
or not, allowing me to take a day off, even if it's at a busy time or something like
mhm,
that. So yeah, I think that mutual respect and there's certain other programs that that Yemi mentioned as well
mhm,
that really continue to push them and they also want to just push the firm in a way that really enhances and makes sure that we kind of use everyone's potential, which really comes from wherever we come from. So
mhm.
it's more something that should be embraced as opposed to like not recognized at all.
Mhm. It
And
sounds
I would say
amazing.
that's also another way to stand out,
Mhm,
even during your internship. So not just like bringing the whole you to work, but if your culture is important to you,
mhm,
finding some type of event that you could host for your for your team just to, improve their global acumen. So I would definitely, like Bear said, it's your culture isn't something you should hide, but
Mm-hmm.
you should definitely be proud of it. And, if you think that there's anything you could do to make your team um, more culturally exposed, use that
Mm-hmm.
opportunity. And because you never know, that could really stand out on the reviews you get from your seniors. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we are coming to the conclusion of our panel. So before we come to a close, what's one piece of advice you want our viewers to take with them?
I mean, you want to do the honor?
I was gonna say, Bear, you wanna? I'm gonna start you. You go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. So I would just say once again, so I'm assuming that most of the viewers, if they're at college right now, they're getting
Mhm.
prepared to enter the workforce. It's just to, once again, I saw like one of the questions before on the list that you sent us earlier, which is
Mhm.
that make your organization stand out amongst the
Mhm.
competition. I think we've definitely touched on a lot of points, but at the end of the day, like what it really comes down to is each person has kind of their own needs, their own preferences. So once again, before committing to any firm, before committing to anything, really, I would say definitely take the time to sit with yourself and really think.
Mhm.
I don't think anyone necessarily knows what they're doing in 5 years, but at least kind of think about what you want to achieve, what is important to you, where do you want to go, even location wise or career wise. And then using that in interviews and when you're seeing these firms to really remember always that you're also interviewing them, right? You're
Mhm.
also learning about them and their culture is what's important to them. So
Mhm.
just keeping that in mind, really get in touch with yourself and just find the firm that's the right fit for you because I feel like every company, every firm
Mhm.
out there has its good points. So it's just about figuring out which of those is kind of means the most to you. So yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Thank you.
you hit on one of my one of the ones I was gonna say. It was making sure that even during your internship that you're
Mhm.
still kind of examining the firm to see if it's the best fit for you or if
Mhm.
you even like the line of service, if it's tax or assurance that you're in, making sure that you kind of that you're thinking about could I do this every day,
Mhm.
for the next year or for the next 2 or 3 years. You don't have
Mhm.
to think all the way about 20 years, but I would say making sure that this line of work is what you want to do because,
Mhm.
as we mentioned, the hours can get exhausting. So I'm just really thinking about during your internship, do I like this? Is this office a good fit for me personality wise? Is it a good fit for me technical wise in terms of the
Mhm.
work that you're doing? And then, shoot, I forgot, I forgot my last point as I was saying that. Um, Ah, dang.
Oh.
Well, but yeah, that sums it up really. Just
Mhm.
making sure that the firm is a good fit for you because there are a
Mhm.
multitude of opportunities. And there are four big accounting firms, but you never know, maybe
Mhm.
something in corporate or maybe even going corporate might interest you a little more. So
Mhm.
taking the internship to really examine if this is best for you.
Mhm. Okay, thank you so much, Yemi, and thank you so much, Bia. So, on behalf of Yielding Accomplished African Women, I'd like to thank you for your time and deciding to join us this Saturday morning for our Career Booster. Thank you so much. And viewers, if you do have any questions, you can leave it in the comment sections and we'll forward it over to our panelists. Thank you, and that is the end of our Career Booster.
Thank you, Eunice. I'm super
Thanks,
glad.
guys.